Welcome back to Egypt Old Kingdom. This is going to be a very important episode historically for ancient Egypt as we move out of the prehistorical period. Now, we do still have the third trial coming up. We have the two expeditions, one for luxuries, one for production. We're doing a little bit of scouting here, the one group up here, and the one down here further on the Nile. And we do still need more people in Memphis itself as well. Because the only free person we really have down here is working on finishing up these wildfowl. So, let's see what happens as we move forward. There's a whole lot of nothing there. And we have finished our expedition here. Another one has begun. So we're going to want to keep exploring. I think I'll move over this way. Horus is over. I'm going to save my favor for now. We'll see why a little bit later. And raids on Lower Nubia. Regularly being raided by the rulers of Upper Egypt, i.e. not us. Taking away gold, cattle, and slaves. And Nubian culture now on the decline due to that aggression. And I think we need to dip back into Memphis here. I think the next thing I want to do is grab a couple of these goody huts. The abandoned settlements. See what we can get out of those. Okay, and we're set on the birds now. Let's definitely go domesticate them. And then we will build a field here. All of that is excellent. Now we do also have enough culture to grab our next advance. I am going to jump up here to continue the growth of the culture investment. Hieratic writing. Used simplified symbols intended for use in official documents and personal letters, developed alongside hieroglyphics, and actively employed ligatures and diacritics, contributed to an increase in administrative workflows. Now, if you're anything like me, ligatures and diacritics are probably not household words for you, and I think it's much easier to see this visually, actually see it, the distinction between hieratic and hieroglyphics. For purposes of demonstration, here are a couple of examples, the first one being hieroglyphics. Both of these are from much later, much more mature period in the development of these systems, around 1300 to 1500 BCE. And we can see with the hieroglyphics, they're images of water, images of birds, of people, eyes. And these were typically carved or painted. Hieratic, by comparison, is more of a cursive form. It looks more like what you might consider to be language in modern sensibilities, and in many ways a simplified, streamlined form of written script. It was not actually called hieratic until the 2nd century, and as with many ancient Egyptian items, this is a Greek name used by the scholar Clement of Alexandria, and it derives from the Greek term for priestly writing, which is what it was mostly used for at the time, but that's sort of a misnomer, because over the course of ancient Egyptian history, hieratic, being more simple and easy to use, was more commonly used and probably more important overall than hieroglyphics. In terms of the game's reference to ligatures and diacritics, a ligature is a marking that ties two other symbols together, and diacritics is something like an accent above a character, for example, just a small mark of some kind that changes the pronunciation and sometimes the meaning of a particular character. In these developments, we can see increasing complexity and nuance and flexibility of the written language. And this is not just some idle historical footnote. It is estimated that the majority of written scripts in the world today all derived in some form from Egyptian hieroglyphics. The Phoenician alphabet, which will come up later in our journey through time, is thought to be able to trace its origins back to Egyptian hieroglyphics, and from that eventually came Greek, Aramaic, other scripts. The spread from there is rather extensive. I think we have enough of a surplus of food now, and we're getting pretty close to our labor limit. So I'm going to pull, not everybody, but I'm going to pull a few people off of food duty, maybe to about there. I'm going to work a little bit more. I want to clear out this sand, start working on getting some more of the antelopes in. And then I also want to work a little bit more out here. A little bit more scouting and a little bit more expeditioning, if you will. I'm wondering if actually we might want to be here instead. Let's scout instead. So you're working over here. You can scout out this way. Go that route. And we now have a new named historical person. Narmer comes to power, energetic king, assuming power over Upper Egypt, chosen by the gods to restore order and unite Egypt, initiating military preparations to fulfill his destiny. Hierakonpolis and Abydos, we've seen those areas before. 200 army, that's not a small amount. And not a whole lot else going on. Oh dear. The scorpion people have accused us of eating their totem animal. We can try to negotiate a dispute, or we can send them gifts. That's awful expensive to increase the odds. So we'll come back to that. We have an ultimatum from Narmer. I'm going to come back to this as well, but we can reject it and start the third trial, or we can submit. Prevent pointless bloodshed, but you can see we fail the trial, lose a bunch of resources for what amounts to about 65 years. No thank you. Let's see what the rest of this is going on. We're going to grab another worker. Now here, we've got cursed lands, and then we also have, this is Nile Cataract. So you have a small chance of losing a worker there, but a bigger chance due to the fact that they're cursed. So we're going to want to work on that. Probably going to lose at least one worker there, but it's got to be done. Okay, abandoned settlement here. There's another one up here, so we can shift you there. And the grain fields are done over here. Excellent. More territory explored, and this is the Nubian area. Upstream from the first cataract, we get culture for having made it through that. And so if you're going to be scouting here, we're working on these two areas over here. I think I need to go back in and throw one more person into farming. I don't have enough food to do another expedition just yet. So we'll go with that. Okay. So back to our conflict. I think we just have to try to negotiate here, even though it's a less than half chance of succeeding. We're not going to throw that much luxuries at them. And we got lucky. Very lucky. Okay. Returning then to the ultimatum from Narmer, I want to see what happens if you submit here, because you get different information based on which option you choose relating to the history. And this here, when the notification disappears, if you just advance time, you'll just count as you having submitted anyway. So, trial failed. We accepted Narmer's claims and submitted to his will. Other peoples didn't resist long as well. To commemorate the victory, ordered the creation of a palette depicting his triumph, donated it to the temple to Horus of Hierakonpolis. Anyway, relations back to being improved, and we have these losses as we noted. So, this here is very curious, the detail here. Narmer's victory, one of the first recorded events in history, and it gives all kinds of details on prisoners, heads of cattle, and other livestock. One of the key events that turned Egypt into a centralized state. Well, that part is true. But I'm very curious where I got these numbers from. I'm sure they didn't pluck them out of thin air, but I can't find anything remotely close to that kind of detail about the military campaign. There's even, in fact, some debate over whether the unification was primarily military. It probably was. Now, we do have confidence that Narmer was, in fact, a very important early Egyptian ruler. And a lot of that comes from this over here, which is a very good representation of the Narmer Palette, which is arguably the most important Egyptian artifact from prior to 3000 BCE. One aspect of the Narmer Palette that really jumps out at you when you look at it here is how remarkably intact it is for being basically 5,000 years old. And there's a lot of imagery, some early hieroglyphics, a great deal of debate whether this is meant to depict actual events or whether it's symbolic, referring to the king's power, all of those. But there are some very clear identifying features of it. If you look at the top middle, both sides here, there's what's known as a serif, and there's two symbols in it. Symbol for catfish, or nar, and the symbol for chisel, or myrrh, hence the name Narmer. You've got the typical Egyptian art form with the head and the legs in profile, but the torso facing forward. The side of the palette shown on the left here has a prominent figure bearing the crown of Upper Egypt. Appears to have a raised weapon about to strike down an enemy. There's the falcon to the right, probably representing Horus. Then on the right side, while it's not as large, near the top you have another figure wearing a different headpiece, also larger than the other figures on the palette, showing dominance or kingship. And this time it's the crown of Lower Egypt. Just to the right of that, around the top middle, there are also, interestingly, some figures that appear to be holding vexilloids. It's the first known inscription of those that we've found anywhere. By vexilloid, we just mean a precursor to a battle standard or a flag. A lot of the rest of the depictions here are highly debated, but at the very least we can say that the Narmer Palette on its own seems to have some clear and convincing elements that are displaying a ruler of United Egypt. And it's a pretty sizable piece, just over 2 feet tall. So now we're definitely going to reject Narmer's ultimatum, start the third trial. And here it is, war begins. New trial, the unification of Egypt. Relations are not good. King Narmer has declared war on us and every other tribe, rejecting his demands. Like a divine bull, mighty and unstoppable, he charges forward to destroy the enemies of United Egypt. That doesn't sound good. He sends small raiding parties to weaken us for the main strike, and the balance of power is not favorable to us. We're outnumbered almost 3-1 if we wait for Narmer to gather his full strength. We're not going to do that. The ambush Narmer option is by far the best. And this is definitely not a balanced event. I think the idea is you have to be prepared to preempt him or you're in some serious trouble. We can fortify to use production to boost our defenses or bribe to use luxuries to limit their attack. But really you just want to be ready militarily and attack them immediately. If we look at our explanation here, we must defend our independence from Narmer's rule. Assisted by the joint army of Lower Egypt, we can do defensive or aggressive, and under aggressive is the only way to earn a silver or gold victory. Now, this description here is, I think, speculative is the kindest way I can say it. Due to the strengthening of Lower Egypt, rulers of Upper Egypt began to lose control over trade with Canaan and Nubia. Well, some of what I've run into actually indicates the opposite could have been the case. That is that Upper Egypt was growing stronger and stronger from trade, their cities becoming more prosperous and more powerful, and they attacked from a position of strength, wanting to absorb Lower Egypt, gain extra resources there, rather from a position of weakness. So, common people see it as a reason for the wrath of the gods, ask the king to restore order. Maybe, but I'd take that with a big grain of salt. Alright, so let's get this attack underway. They're forecasting a hard victory, even though they outnumber almost 2-1. Horus has decided to be indifferent. I'm hoping this works better than what they think, because I don't want to take a lot of casualties here. Well, we got a pretty quick flanking. I like the way it's going so far. Oh, no, 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 no. Okay. Well, that wasn't perfect. I mean, 60 casualties, but it definitely could have gone worse. I will take it. And we win. Definitely going to release. Gold victory plus culture. Relations back to where they were. Narmer paid for his demands and is paying tribute. Narmer did in fact win. Relations between Upper and Lower Egypt were quite complicated. And they're basically describing the situation as murky, as very much in a dynamic flux. And that's definitely quite a good way to put it. So we improved to friendly with Flax, neutral with the owl people. We've explored the Asians area over here. That's where the owls are. And we get a culture bonus from that. So, one of the things that annoys me that happens here, that they don't tell you, is that after this battle with Narmer, it makes sense that we got everybody kicked out of Upper Egypt, but, you know, this expedition just stopped. And so now we have to go back in and restart it. And it's easy to miss that that happened because you just plan on your expeditions, you know, keep going. So I just find that quite annoying. In any case, we're scouting here. We want to keep scouting out this way, I think. Let's keep going around. And then from the tech side, I want to grab state cults here, which is a fairly low-priced one for what we have available, one of our lower-priced ones, but also it's going to really change our strategy going forward. This is a critical advance. So, to consolidate the king's power, a mighty state cult was created. This cult was based on the idea of monarchical divine authority, and you can see the kings becoming very powerful in terms of their religious authority and also temporal authority. The king became the chief mediator between men and gods, authorized construction of temples, led all major ceremonies, all works and sacrifices made in the name. You're getting the idea. The king's power is verging on absolute at this point. And the favor is nice, but the new cults are where this really matters. So if we hop along, and we have 5 new cults here, and the main gameplay difference is most of these are permanent now, as opposed to these, you know, limited several turn duration ones that we've been going with. Seshat, pretty well described here. Patron goddess of writing and counting, guardian of architects, and a small bonus, but permanent, to production and luxuries. Hathor is less well described, I would say. Goddess of cattle and any material wealth, and plus 0.5 food, but also really represented a couple of aspects of the female gender. Specifically, there's a lot of maternal aspects there, also described often as being a consort of some of the other deities. So those sort of dual aspects are really emphasized with her in the pantheon. Ra, very well known and creator of Egypt and the universe. You can't get much more important than that. Does have limited duration, but boosts any positive events. If we get any particularly good ones, we might want to consider Ra. Then there's Thoth, patron god of writing and counting. Small bonus, but permanent to our culture, so we could keep diving deep into that. And a lot more emphasis also, I think, from what I've read on Thoth, comes with being a mediator between the disputes of the other deities, although that's not particularly something that would be represented well in the game. Osiris, we've already talked about before, the emphasis on the underworld. Sacrificial ancestor, one who defeated death, and a very, very powerful cult in the game. Effective other cults are increased by 4%, and that amount can actually go up later. But the idea of investing in Osiris, which we're actually going to do right away, and then getting greater impact from some of these other deities down the line, is very much in vogue here. And then you can worship Osiris once per turn. And then there's also, you know, do we want to go with Thoth going forward with culture, or do we want to go with something like Seshat to boost production and luxuries? And I think that we're going to need to verge more on the economic side. I could keep going on the culture side, but really at this point, you kind of have to decide, are you really going to want to try to build much in terms of the pyramids when they come? Because if they do, you're going to want to prepare your economy for it. So I want to try to lean into that. The other thing is the military is gradually become less valuable to us. For example, if we were to try to attack here, the Scorpion people, there's a limit on how much we can take. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but you see the 30% of our total can participate in the battle. You can see if we tried to attack here, they would simply crush us. And the remoteness idea, I mean, the journey to a different region here would be weeks each direction. And if there was a crisis, you know, back on the home front, the king would want his troops around. So that does make sense from that aspect, but it's very steep, and it makes military acquisitions extremely dicey if they have a significant force in the region that you want to go after. So, onward we go. Yuck. Well, that's good, though. We have a new cereal crop. Where is that at? Here? This is already a profitable area. We can boost it even more. Growth to how much it's producing. Creation price, no. And the one-time harvesting, no. So, here we go. Look at that. 6.3. That's insane. This is... I don't think I've ever seen a field that productive. That's fantastic. Okay. Sand was cleared down here. So we can switch you over to working on worshipping the antelopes. Go back with Osiris. Grab another worker. Okay, so we scouted out here. I think I want to move up there, even though it's a lengthy scout. And then we're also going to try to finish this up if we can. '56 culture. Again? Oh, the luck there is just terrible. Okay. Well, we're gonna yank. We're probably just gonna have to yank you out then. Another ancestral duty. Successful expedition to Buto, and they're going back for more. Captos Colossi. And this is basically talking about masonry stoneworking. Egyptians began working with hard stone early in their history, using ceremonial utensils, stelae, and statues. Earliest major examples are 3 magnificent 4-meter-high statues of the god Min from the town of Koptos, worshipped as creator god and lord of the eastern desert. So we can see where this is going, developing the stoneworking ability for later use in the pyramids. And we're going to drop down here. And hopefully not have any more problems. I mean, back-to-back losses there is just hideous. And from a tech standpoint, we could grab some of these. None of them particularly compelling to me, though. I want to wait and save up for something a little bit more expensive, but also more valuable. Okay. So we do have another worker available. And let's go ahead. Let's work on another one of these. I want to keep ramping up that favor as much as I can. Osiris again. More territory explored. Keep on going around. And now I think we have enough to move up further. And I want to grab... You know, obviously always more favor is going to be tempting. But I'm really focused on the luxuries. We're going to grab the Pottery Wheel. We have discussed these before in previous series, but Egyptian-shaped ceramics with their hands or pre-made molds at first. Round stands for modeling pots came to use, and then they became revolvable, increasing the quality and rate of production, and that all makes sense. And I am also going to do one permanent boost from Seshat. Okay. So I also... With that, I want to use this. I'm going to slide one additional worker from farming. I mean, particularly with this that we're getting. And get additional boost there. And I think this is probably a pretty good place to leave off. We have succeeded in fighting off King Narmer in contravention of actual history. And we are gradually moving forward with trying to expand our scouting and our reach in the area beyond Lower Egypt. So thanks for watching, everybody. Journey through Egyptian history will continue coming up soon.